would you put this many hours into work? This is not good. And people should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart. So this is not recommended for anyone. I just did it because if I didn't do it, then Tesla, good chance Tesla would die. When my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer, so the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she had to sleep in the office. So work hard, like every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, say like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. I mean, Tesla really faced a severe threat of death due to the Model 3 production ramp. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die, and it was extremely difficult to solve them.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many hours?
Just working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop.
Do you ever worry about yourself imploding? Like it's just too much?
Absolutely. If you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company. It's good to think in terms of the physics approach or first principles, which is, rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine, and you reason up from there. And this is a good way to figure out if something really makes sense, or if it's just what everybody else is doing. It's hard to think that way. You can't think that way about everything. It takes a lot of effort. But if you're trying to do something new, it's the best way to think. And that framework was developed by physicists to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. So it's really a powerful method. Then it's just you have to apply a lot of hours to actually working. So the way I generally do it is I'll be working at SpaceX on Monday, and then Monday night fly to the Bay Area, spend Tuesday and Wednesday in the Bay Area, then at Tesla, and then fly back on Wednesday night, spend Thursday and Friday at SpaceX. In the last several months, then I would fly back here on a Saturday and either spend Saturday and Sunday at Tesla or spend Saturday at Tesla and Sunday at SpaceX.
Just showing up is half the battle. Just, you got to try hard to do it, and don't be afraid of failure. You also need to be rooted in reality. So you shouldn't, it's easy to get high in your own supply. You've got to not be afraid to innovate, but also don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not. Or you're going to get fixated on a bad solution. Yeah, don't be afraid of new arenas. You can get a book, you can learn something, and experiment with your hands, and just make it happen. Find a way or make a way to get something done. But I think people can choose to be not ordinary. They can choose to not necessarily conform to the conventions that were taught to them by their parents. So yes, I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary.
If somebody is doing something that is useful to the rest of society, I think that's a good thing. Like, it doesn't have to change the world. Like, you know, if you're doing something that has high value to people, if it has a small amount of good for a large number of people, I think that's fine. Like, stuff doesn't need to be changed the world just to be good.
Being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment, because people tend to, a natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
You know? So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. I think certainly extremely tenacious, and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. But all those things improve the odds of success.
Okay.
I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve. You construct this like there's this great holy grail potential in the future. You have to stay grounded in the short term. So because if you don't do things that pay the bills, you're not going to achieve the ultimate long-term objective. But it's nice to have that sort of holy grail long-term potential out there as an inspiration for coming to work. It's really a mindset. You have to decide, we're going to try to do things differently, well, provided that they're better. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be different and better. But I think you just have to sort of decide, let's think beyond the normal stuff and have an environment where that sort of thinking is encouraged and rewarded, and where it's okay to fail as well. Because when you try new things, you try this idea, that idea, well, a large number of them are not going to work. And that has to be okay. If every time somebody comes up with an idea it has to be successful, you're not going to get people coming up with ideas.
You had that third failure in a row. Did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated.
No food around. There was poverty. There was literally, the worst condition was worse than during the war. And so in that kind of an environment, it made me feel as a kid always that I wanted to get out of there and that I deserved better than that. And I always was dreaming about coming to America. America was always the land of opportunity. So I always shot for the top. No matter what it is, I was so hungry for success. I was so hungry to get out of Austria. I was so determined. I had this fire in the belly. And I always, like I said, dreamt big. In bodybuilding, when I got into bodybuilding, it was not just to become a bodybuilding champion, but I wanted to be the greatest bodybuilder of all times. I always shoot for the top because I always feel like if you have a great vision and if you think big, then you're also going to end up big. If you think little, by accident, no one ever has gotten big. You have to have a very clear vision of where you want to go in your career. You cannot get into bodybuilding and think that just by exercising every day, that by accident you're just going to be a world champion. As I said earlier, you have to have a very clear vision and you have to see it in front of you. And then you got to go and shoot for the stars. The bigger you shoot, the further you go. I want to be another Reg Park, that I want to be in London winning the Mr. Universe contest. I saw myself with the trophy in the hand. I saw hundreds of bodybuilders around me looking up at me, idolizing me, and thousands of people up there cheering and standing ovation. That's what I saw. And exactly 5 years later, with 5-6 hours of training like a fanatic, I was standing on that stage in London and I won the Mr. Universe contest with the age of 20 as the youngest Mr. Universe ever. That teaches you right away a lesson, because the lesson was for me, you got to have a clear vision and then go after that vision. Why is that important? Because it brings joy to you. Every set that I did, every rep that I did, every 500 pounds I lifted, every 1,000 sit-ups that I did brought me joy, because it took me one step closer to turning that vision into reality. So many people don't enjoy their jobs. In America, for instance, in the latest study, it said that 74% of the people in America don't enjoy their jobs. Now imagine, you work all year and all your life, and you don't enjoy your job. This is because they didn't have a vision in the first place. That's why I say always to young kids, before you go out after college or before college or whatever, think about it, what you really want to do. Don't listen to your parents, don't listen to your coaches, to your mentors and all of those things. You can listen to them, but in the end, you have to make the decision. Because I tell you, my parents had no interest in bodybuilding at all. My mother and my father wanted me to have the regular Austrian life. They wanted me to follow my father's footsteps and become a police officer. They wanted me to marry a girl by the name of Heidi and have 5 kids. But that's not the life that I wanted. I wanted to go to America. I wanted to be a world champion in bodybuilding. I wanted to get into movies and be a movie star and all this. They didn't understand that, and they were totally against all of that. The bottom line is, if you keep focused and you can see your goal, then it never should be a big problem, because remember, everyone, no matter how successful you are, you will have failures. Don't ever fool yourself. I have had many, many failures. Movies that went in the toilet that didn't work well. In my bodybuilding, I lost competitions, and in my personal life, I've had failures. This is what happens. But what makes you a winner is that when you fail, you get up again and you dust yourself off and you keep going towards your goal.
We keep our dreams. We believe it. No matter how big your dream is, make small, tiny steps ahead. When I graduated from universities, and before for 3 years I tried to fill in the universities. So I applied jobs for 30 times, got rejected. I went for a police, they said, no, you're not good. I applied for Harvard for 10 times, rejected. Today, a lot of young people lose hope, lose vision, and start to complain. Because we also have the same period. Because when it's not a good feeling being rejected by so many people. We also depressed, but at least later we find the world has a lot of opportunity. How you see the world, how you catch the opportunity. We don't have a rich father, powerful uncle. We don't have $1 from bank, 1 cent from government. Just work as a team. Because most of the people, they have a fancy ideas in the day. When they wake up in the morning, they go back to do the same job. We have to do something different. So from there, I started my business borrowing $2,000 from my relatives and friends. So 1999, I started Alibaba in my apartment. People say, Alibaba model is terrible. Does not make money, have this and that, all the big bad things, because Amazon is better, eBay is better, Google is better, and there's no such model like Alibaba in the USA. So I told myself and people, we were better than people thought. And those people who are experts of riding horses, they all fall down, and I'm still surviving. So many people I talked to at that time for Alipay, they say, this is the stupidest idea you have ever got. Now we have 800 million people using this Alipay. My advice to the young people, any mistake is an income, is a wonderful revenue for you. So I told myself and told my young people, before 20 years old, be a good student. When you do entrepreneur, just learn some experience. Before 30 years old, follow somebody. Go to a small company. Normally in a big company, it is good to learn processing. You are a part of a big machine. But when you go to a small company, you learn the passion, you learn the dreams. You learn how to do a lot of things at one time. So before 30 years old, it's not which company you go, it's which boss you follow. It's very important. A good boss teaches you differently. From 30 to 40 years old, you have to think very clearly. You're working for yourself if you really want to be an entrepreneur. When you're 40 to 50 years old, you have to do all the things that you are good at. Don't try to jump into the new area. It's too late. You may be successful, but the rate of dying is too big. So 40 to 50, think about how can focus on things that you are good at. But when you are 50 to 60 years old, work for the young people, because young people can do better than you. So rely on them, invest on them, making sure they're good.
When Jeff Bezos was born, his parents were still teenagers. His dad was not the greatest father or husband, so after 17 months, they divorced. His mother remarried, and her new husband adopted Jeff. When he was growing up, he loved taking apart toys and putting them back together. And one time when he was just a toddler, he took apart his own crib with a screwdriver. As a child, he spent his summers on his grandparents' ranch, where he did all kinds of chores. He helped fix windmills, vaccinate cattle, and many other things. During high school, he also worked at McDonald's. He worked at the back flipping burgers, but that was not the only thing he learned. This job gave him the opportunity to learn everything he can about customer service, working under pressure, and the value of being a good manager. You can learn responsibility in any job if you take it seriously. You learn a lot as a teenager working at McDonald's. It's different from what you learn in school. Don't underestimate the value of that. I've learned basically everything I've ever needed to know about customer service. At school, he was an excellent student, so after finishing high school, he enrolled in college to become a theoretical physicist. But things were not going well for him. He couldn't keep up with the other students and had a really hard time doing algebra. And even though he was a smart young man, it was just too difficult for him. And one time, he unsuccessfully spent 3 hours on a math problem only to have it solved by a college student in 1 minute. In that moment, he realized that he was never going to become a great theoretical physicist, so he made a lifetime decision to switch his major to computer science. After graduating from college, Jeff Bezos worked different jobs, but in the early 90s, when the internet was rising fast, he saw it as an opportunity that he just couldn't pass. So he quit his high-paying job to sell books online. And everyone thought he was crazy. Even he knew that there was a 70% chance it would fail, but he didn't care. He had a vision of building a gigantic digital bookstore named Amazon, and the company started from his garage. In 1999, Amazon.com became a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and Jeff Bezos became Person of the Year. I didn't think I'd regret trying and failing, and I suspected I would always be haunted by a decision to not try at all. Amazon initially started as an online marketplace for books, but later expanded to selling almost anything that can cross your mind. And today, Jeff Bezos is officially the richest person in the world. But since the beginning, Amazon has failed so many times, and those failures cost billions of dollars. But without failure, innovation could never be possible. So Jeff Bezos was never afraid of failure. Have you ever faced defeat? Have you ever failed at something? It's terrifying, isn't it? Failure is a huge deal. People lose sleep over avoiding it, get really depressed. Families are broken by children not living up to their parents' expectations. But please, set everything aside. Quiet your mind for a second. What do you want from this life? Who do you want to be? What is your idea of successful life? Wake up tomorrow and do everything that's in your power to achieve that. It's a long and painful process. But don't get discouraged. Be consistent. Don't be too hard on yourself. If you are an adult, don't listen to anyone. Not Jeff Bezos, not your mom, dad, uncle, your cat. They have their versions of success, their stories, and you have yours, so start writing it. So what? Maybe you'll fail. But what if you win?
To live life golden, yeah, we're golden.